You're listening to the Author Stories Podcast, bringing you the story behind the stories and the storytellers.
Margaret White,
Terry Brooks,
Sheena Kamal,
Matthew Quick,
JT Ellison,
Walt D. Williams,
Brad Thor,
Corey, Dr. O, Brandon Sanderson,
Robin Mom,
Ernest Klein, Jim Butcher,
Sherwin Harris.
Visit hankgarner.com for archives of all the shows. Today's guest is...
Well, thanks for joining me again for the Author Stories Podcast, where I bring you the story behind the stories and the storytellers. Today, I'm super excited to have Tim Dorsey on the show with me. He has an amazing new book. It's the 25th book, if you can believe that, in the Serge Storm's book. It's called Mermaid Confidential. And if you've loved any of this series or looking for a place to jump into the series, this is a fantastic book. I love it, and I know everyone else is too. Mermaid Confidential, available everywhere now. Welcome to the show, Tim.
No, thank you very much, Hank. I appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. Tim, we begin each show with the same question, and that question is, what is your first memory of wanting to be a writer or storyteller?
I was actually doing it before I realized I wanted to do it. I had there's a little manual typewriter that my folks had, and I started playing with it when I was about 12. And I started writing humorous essays. I mean, but, at age 12, they were far from humorous. But,
they were humorous to you.
I was trying to write. Yeah, I was at that time, I was actually influenced by Rowan Martin's Laugh-In and in Mad Magazine. And so I was... but I was a weird kid because it was 12, and I was writing. I was trying to write political satires, and I was writing things about the Nixon administration, and what I vividly remember that. That was my earliest memory when I really decided. I remember I was a sophomore in high school, and I was talking to a writer with the Associated Press last night, and we're talking about how we hated reading because of, the stuff that they would give you in the curriculum back then. It was so stuffy. And, but then we got turned on to some irreverent, iconoclastic books, Catch-22 and all the stuff by Kurt Vonnegut. Oh, and we're like, whoa, this is reading? Reading can be this much fun? And, I was, you try to emulate your heroes, sports figures or rock bands or whatever, but I was in awe of the writers. And so I said, this is what I want to do. And I was 15 specifically when I made this my life goal. And so I just kept, then I started writing for reals, trying to, work toward this. And so I wrote for the high school paper, and then I got to college, and I wrote for the college paper, and then I got out of school and joined a regular, daily, newspaper, and kept doing that until I could finally get my first book done and in and accepted.
Tim, when you really get into the Serge Storm series, Kurt Vonnegut is not the first person that I think of, but now that you have said that, I totally see the connection there. There's something about the kind of wry sense of humor way of looking at things. Has that, I know that Vonnegut was obviously an influence on you, but is that something that you think about, paying homage to him, even on a very off the cuff sort of way?
Well, I hope it would be. I don't consciously think about it because, I've read like just about everything he's done. And so it's just kind of there as part of training, in other words, the one thing that the big influence he had is just to unfetter your imagination. Let your, don't try to control it or, metafiction, breaking down the fourth wall, and he would have himself in the books sometimes, and he would, as the narrator, and it was just, his imagination went so wild that I said, just don't rein it in at all. you can go places that you probably never thought of before. So that's the biggest influence, and it's in a lot of the books. I mean, just like in one book, I had a narrator as a character, and he's hanging out with Coleman, and he gets too drunk to continue narrating. And that's one memory of doing that. So,
speaking of wanting to write satire, and as a 12-year-old, not that 12-year-olds can't write really funny stuff or even satirical stuff, but one thing that only comes with age and experience is the subtlety that is needed to write good satire. It doesn't necessarily have to be right on the nose, and it benefits from not being on the nose, but from being subtle and getting to a point by kind of going around the point. When do you feel like that skill, that you really started to capture that skill of being able to see a thing and address the thing without just plowing right into it?
It was gradual. I mean, I was writing humor columns for my college paper, and then when I was with a regular newspaper, I also continued writing humor columns, and those are less subtle. But when I started writing these books, some of the best, some of the funniest stuff I found, especially like reading other authors, is not where you just take a big rubber mallet and slam it down, like in a Midway. But it's just when you toss something aside and just let it lay out there, and let the reader pick it up.
Yeah.
You don't do a big buildup. You don't call a lot of attention to it. You just, you use your, like you said, well, just subtle. You have a thought, and you just don't overplay it. It's like, brevity is the soul of wit.
Right.
So.
Does some of that come from the form itself? When you're writing a shorter column, you kind of need to get to the point. If you're writing a novel and you've got 100,000 words, give or take, to play with, there's a lot of subtlety that can go, into 100,000 words, and a lot of story that you can, sort of bury things in, for lack of a better word. But when you're dealing with a 500-word column or 1,000 words or something, you kind of need to get to the point.
Yeah, it's like a stand-up comedian versus, a monologist.
Yeah,
it's like stand-up, needs to be bam, 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 and but that's absolutely true. I mean, it's like if you're writing, there's areas where you have humorous concepts that you work into, but then there's other areas where you're just describing. You're setting up the chapter, you're setting up where they are, and just working toward the plot. And within that, you could just drop in a little line in a paragraph that's purely intended just for setup, or to build the scene or to build the character, and there's a lot of room to play there.
Yeah. Tim, if I'm not mistaken, you were born in Indiana but grew up in Florida. Spent some of your formative years working around the Southeast and in Alabama, I think, and then settling back in Florida. Your stories definitely have a Florida Southeast American feel to them. The sense of place is tangible. Is almost a character in the books. But being from Indiana, and I'm assuming that you have some family connections in Indiana, I'm always intrigued by how a sense of place affects the kinds of stories that we tell, or the kind of storyteller that we become. Do you feel like that Indiana has any pull on you or any influence on you at all?
I was too young when I left. I mean, I was born there, and I was just very small, so I don't really have any influence, from there. But Florida, definitely. I mean, I grew up, and I had just all of my, just early childhood memories, and just fishing and playing Little League, and and all that stuff. And it's Florida is a lot. Well, it's a lot different now than it was then, but it's always been a lot different from the rest of the country. I mean, I never saw snow until I was, my mid-teens, and it was the main thing about Florida. I just remember what a great childhood it was. I mean, a lot of people say, "Oh, my childhood, it was horrible," and this and that. And I'm like, really? I mean, I was in the right time and place. It was like this tropical Huck Finn, just run around barefoot and go down to we were near the coast, and there's the Intracoastal Waterway with bridges, and just go fishing off the bridges as a kid, and it was just such freedom. You could do a lot more when you were a kid back then. It was a safer world.
Yeah. Well, now with Mermaid Confidential, we are now up to the 25th book in the Serge Storm series. Where did Serge come from? What was, and looking back, I'm sure that you had no idea from the beginning that he would carry you as far as he has, or, you would get to go on this journey along with him. But where did it all begin?
Well, it was actually an accident. It was, I was doing the first draft of Florida Roadkill, and I had, when I've heard other authors, talk about, when you're starting, look for the best and try to emulate them, and see what they do, and it was, like Travis and Meyer were, John D. McDonald's characters. So I said, well, let me have a couple of buddies, and I started with those. And as I was writing the book, I was creating a villain. And, my favorite villains are like the James Bond villains, they're just larger than life.
Yeah. Over the top.
Yeah. They're like, really intelligent, borderline criminally insane, and so I wanted to create a character like that so that the confrontation, and the tension would be, that much higher as opposed to just having a street level, robber or whatever. And so as I was creating him, the other thing going on in the book was I was trying to get as much Florida and Floridiana. And, I really liked when other authors would tuck in trivia and real places or whatever. And I said, well, that's where I'm going to go really hard on that aspect of it, because I would love to, pick up a book, as much of that, in there. And so at one point, since Serge is unstable, and I had all this stuff I wanted to get in, and, not enough plot to hang it on, but I had at one point, when I was building up, when I was actually, backgrounding Serge, at the beginning, I had him go off his meds, and he ended up like climbing up this highway sign and giving this rant. Truck stopped traffic and TV, trucks pulled up and everything. But he went on this rant about Florida, and it was, it showed how crazy he was, but underneath it kind of made sense. And I crammed a lot of Florida in, but not in a way where I didn't want to cram it in, so that it was slowing the story down, or, I was indulging myself and boring the reader. So I had him deliver all this Florida, stuff in a very, I'd say probably a different way than it might be done otherwise. And after I finished that one, I'm going, okay, I like that, and then he went along, and I kept building up his knowledge of Florida and his how much he was a Floridophile. And I think he did a second rant. And after that second one, I said, okay, I need to rethink this whole book. In other words, this is my main character. He's the villain, but he's the main character because he's going to be the mouthpiece for Florida. And because it's kind of an anthropomorphic, representation of the state, which in a way, like you were mentioning, is the, main character. And so that's how I got it. That was about, maybe halfway through the first draft. So when I went back and did the subsequent drafts, I reconciled, him being the main character from the very beginning. And that's how it happened. You just start writing, and you don't look down, you keep going, and you surprise yourself, and possibilities open up that you hadn't planned.
Dabble is a proud sponsor of Author Stories. Dabble is an easy-to-use cloud-based writing tool that gives writers a way to organize, plot, and create amazing stories wherever they are. Write in our desktop app on your Mac or Windows computer, tablet, or mobile device. Dabble syncs your latest version with the cloud on all your devices. Write anywhere and anytime inspiration strikes. We got you. Dabble is my preferred writing tool, and I think it will be yours as well. Visit dabblewriter.com for your free trial. Things We Never Got Over, the new book by best-selling author Lucy Score. Bearded bad boy barber Knox refers to live his life the way he takes his coffee, alone, unless you count his basset hound Waylon. Knox doesn't tolerate drama even when it comes in the form of a stranded runaway bride. Naomi wasn't just running away from her wedding. She was riding to the rescue of her estranged twin to Knockemout, Virginia, a rough-around-the-edges town where disputes are settled the old-fashioned way, with fist and beer, usually in that order. Too bad for Naomi, her evil twin hasn't changed at all. After helping herself to Naomi's car and cash, Tina leaves her with something unexpected. The niece Naomi didn't know she had. Now she's stuck in town with no car, no job, no plan, and no home, with an 11-year-old going on 30 to take care of. There's a reason Knox doesn't do complications or high-maintenance women, especially not the romantic ones. But since Naomi's life imploded right in front of him, the least he can do is help her out of her jam. And just as soon as she stops getting into new trouble, he can leave her alone and get back to his peaceful, solitary life. At least that's the plan until the trouble turns to real danger. Things We Never Got Over, the new book by best-selling author Lucy Score. An Innocent Client, the first book in the Joe Dillard legal thriller series. A preacher is found brutally murdered in a Tennessee motel room. A beautiful, mysterious young girl is accused. In this best-selling debut, criminal defense lawyer Joe Dillard has become jaded over the years as he's tried to balance his career against his conscience. Savvy but cynical, Dillard wants to quit doing criminal defense, but he can't resist the chance to represent someone who might actually be innocent. His drug-addicted sister has just been released from prison, and his mother is succumbing to Alzheimer's, but Dillard's commitment to the case never wavers despite the personal troubles and professional demands that threaten to destroy him. Chosen by BookBub readers as one of the top 100 crime novels of all time, get started on this great series with An Innocent Client, where it all started. Read for free with Kindle Unlimited or buy it in paperback or audiobook. An Innocent Client by Scott Pratt.
Over the last 5, maybe 10 years, it's kind of become a meme that crazy stuff happens in Florida, and you'll see news stories. Florida man wrestles alligator and gets leg chewed off or something. It's just some of the most madcap headlines that you could dream up, and you just tack Florida man on the front of it, and there it is. And Serge is kind of the embodiment of Florida man, isn't he?
Well, it's become, but it's kind of interesting. Where he was he was doing his thing, before that whole phenomenon,
right? Exactly.
And so then the Florida man and the reputation for craziness came up, and that actually helped as far as with the series. In other words, I guess at the beginning they said, "Wow, these are pretty weird books," and some people were loving them and some people were hating them, and but then with all the strangeness that went around and how our reputation built, as far as that goes, that people were more oriented toward expecting craziness from a Florida book. And it's I don't know, it's just been a very interesting phenomenon. Carl Hiaasen was starting it way back, way back before, we saw this on the horizon. And I remember, loving his books, and there's other authors, not necessarily funny, but James W. Hall and Randy Wayne White, and others, Eddie Buchanan were writing this sort of stuff, way back. So, it's finally, I don't know if Florida started getting crazy, or people just started to notice a lot more.
Right. I think the internet kind of opened the doors for other people that were not familiar. I live just a couple of hours away from Florida in South Mississippi, and um, it's good times. It's they're kind of that wild cousin that you get to hang out with a couple of times a year, and
Yeah, I mean,
anyway.
it's. I think it's always been there or growing,
Right.
over the years, and but now it's kind of like our cash crop.
Right.
See people, it's late night comedians, mine it for everything it's worth, and
Right.
so
Hey,
anyway,
recognize your strong suits and run with them. That's what I say.
yeah,
So Tim, you said that, when you started writing that some people loved the character in the series and some people, hated it. There's something to be said for getting people to be passionate about it one way or the other. The worst thing that could happen, and there's a thriller writer that I have followed for, almost 30 years. And his early stuff I absolutely loved, and he was just doing interesting things with the genre, and you looked forward to that new book coming out every year. And then the more he's published, you just kind of get lukewarm on it, because you know that about 80% through the book, he's just going to kind of let the cat out of the bag, and it's just going to um, it's going to end too easily, and he kind of takes the easy way out, and that's not ever where you want to be as a writer, to get the reputation that well, I may pick up the book or I may not, because I know it's going to be an enjoyable story, and the characters I'm going to love, but it's just not going to be satisfying in the end. Have you ever come up against that in your writing, and thought, I'm I don't love it anymore, and had to take some time away? Like how, I guess what I'm asking is, how do you prevent that from happening? Because with Mermaid Confidential, it is just gas pedal to the wall all the way through, as they all have been. How do you maintain that level of love that you have for the character, for the setting, and for the series throughout 25 books?
well, I mean, the love's there. I mean, I love the. I love writing about the material, and I really enjoy writing a lot. I guess the main thing is what you have just said. I consciously think about, because when you start getting way up there in the numbers of how many books are in the series, you are aware that you've got your audience out there, and it's like they could very easily, after that many books, say, yeah, maybe I'll skip this one and get the next one. I don't have to get every one. And so you're just aware of it, and it's just a matter of sitting down and planning when you're going to do the book. It's like, what will, and it works both ways. What will maintain the reader's interest, but more importantly, if something will really maintain my interest, it'll help me get there. And so I really stop and think, what twist in the series can I do this time? And each book, there's additional plot lines, that intertwine, and I often use those, to create something new. And by those additional plot lines having something new, it gives Serge and Coleman something new to deal with. They always have their thing going. I mean, they're always road tripping, and just one thing that's helped is they discover new parts of Florida and new arcane trivia and stuff like that. And when I point that stuff out, a lot of people either identify with it, oh, I remember I was there, or whatever, or they look it up. I've got a lot of people say they use Google Earth, to follow, the characters,
Oh, that's
while
fun.
they're going through the book. But it's just a matter of remaining hyper conscious about not letting it get stale. Just like they got to come up with something new each time.
Right.
But hopefully it'll fly.
One thing that I love about your books, Tim, is that you love to merge. Uh, you love to kind of work in dichotomies, things that should not go together. but you mash them together in a way that that is intriguing and makes you love these characters. What does the term lovable serial killer mean to you?
Well, yeah, there's a dichotomy. I don't know. I mean, that's where, like, a lot of people, like I said, you really want, like I said, passions going both ways. Because if you have it, if it's just, ho hum, you won't retain readership. I mean, I'll never have the people who don't like it, but the people who like it, if there's just strong passions, you keep them. And as far as a serial killer, the thing is that living in Florida, and I've found this out, where most of the readers that I have are the most law-abiding, the ones that you wouldn't expect to like the books. And, it's the type of people who, like say, I can't tell you how many times I've heard people say, I've really nice people, grandparents and whatever, school teachers, and they'll say, if somebody described this book to me, I'd say I would never read a book like that. And I said, when I read it, and I feel so guilty, laughing at it, because there's so many, there's so many jerks out there, and you got to deal with so much hassles, in Florida, and all kinds of stuff. And the nicest people just take the high road, and bite their lip and just walk away, and that's the way you should do it. But Serge doesn't walk away, so he's vicariously the person who gives just desserts to the people who infuriate us. And so that's how I've kind of taken somebody who should be reviled and made him sort of into an anti-hero of sorts that these people root for.
Anti-hero is probably the best term I could think of. That's fantastic for Serge. Your titles of your books always kind of give a nod to something we're gonna learn in the book. In Mermaid Confidential, where do we find Serge and Coleman? What are they up to, and where are they going to take us in this book?
This one, I was spending a lot of time in the Keys, and I really enjoyed the area, and I was spending a lot of time in different parts of the Keys. I mean, they actually visit Key West, but I've done books almost entirely in Key West before. And this time they kind of evenly spread it out all up and down the Keys. So you can get into, so that could, expose the reader to some things that they might not know about, as they're speeding down to Key West, different parts of the Keys. And I'm not really giving anything away here because it happens fairly early. And I think it's mentioned in the Dust Jacket copy. But the conceit of the book is they're always road tripping. And so Serge says, we need to pump the brakes because, we're always tearing around the state. And I kind of want to slow down and drop anchor for a while and really in a place I love and really get bone deep, into that part of the state. And so they, and Coleman says, you don't mean, and Serge says, that's right, we're going condo. So well, the other part is just there's a slice of culture down here that I really haven't, immersed myself in yet. And, and it's Florida is known, I mean, there are condos other places, but Florida's really known for, the denizens of condo communities. So him and Coleman, they lease a condo and move in, and that's just, I mean, after that, it really wasn't much work because the book almost writes itself from that point. He moves in and gets to know neighbors and gets involved in, a bunch of stuff. And then there's other things going on around the area, which helped me, show the reader, that part of the Keys. It's those parts of the Keys that, you drive through, and a lot of it's very small town, but with this outrageous artery of all this tourist traffic going through. And, there's a lot of stretches. Like I said, most people are, on their way to Key West, and they blow through these areas and they don't really notice what they're going through. And so I have Serge stop and just point out, everything that's going on, Keys culture wise, and these small little strips that they just, are going, over the speed limit, just breezing on by.
Tim, when you start thinking about a new book, with 25 books in the series, I'm sure you probably have kind of fallen into a routine where certain times of year are times to start dreaming up new adventures, and other parts of the year for publishing and promoting and things like that. Um, what is that? What is that time like for you when you start dreaming up the next adventure? Are you a guy that sits down and kind of draws out plot lines, and they're going to be here and then they're going to go here and they're going to bump into someone here that then causes this thing to happen, or are you more of a kind of listen to the characters and see what they're telling you kind of person?
Well, it's actually for a little bit. I mean, I'm obviously somewhat neurotic, but it's at first it's a kind of a tense time of the year because I'm starting with almost nothing. I mean, I have a lot of notes about additional things I can put in the books and episodes, but you need the main spine of the book, and so I try to think. Well, I've done this, and I've done Spring Break and this book over here, and I've done, and you go through it. I'm like, well, what can I, what can the spine be? And I literally will just be thinking about it while I'm driving around or in the shower or whatever. You can't really sit down at the computer and come up with it. 'Cause almost every time it's just been a moment. It's been a eureka moment, where I'll just be like, driving, someplace, down the coast or across the Everglades, and my mind's cleared. I'm just daydreaming about the next book, and then suddenly, pow, it hits, and once it hits, it's a domino effect. It's okay. That's it, and then here's how it's going to evolve. Here's going to be the ending. Here's along the way, how it builds. So, that's pretty much my approach at that time of year.
That after 25 books, that moment of inspiration where an idea hits and then the dominoes start falling, as you said. Does that ever get old? Does it ever become where you just assume that's going to happen, or is there still some magic in the creative process?
Well, I only assume it's going to happen because it's always happened before. But like I said, until it does, there is that tension that this is going to be the one that's going to be difficult. To have something, just like lightning in a bottle, just suddenly appear, and now I got my my plot, what my guys are going to do. It's that's the only assumption is I tell myself. If I've gone a couple of weeks and I'm not really coming up with something, I said, "Don't worry, you've always felt this way before, and it always works out."
Right. Well, I think I speak for all fans of the series, and I hope that the tension never leaves. That because magic comes out of that, and for 25 books, it always has. So let's here's fingers crossed for you that they keep coming. Mermaid Confidential is available everywhere now. We're going to have links to it in the show notes of this episode where you can go grab it in hardback edition or read it on your Kindle or audiobook. Whatever way you like to consume Tim Dorsey books, you can grab it now or run down to your local bookstore and support local books as well. Tim, if people are excited about what you've told them and want to dig into all the stuff that you do, where can they find you online, and is there a proper way to begin the series? Do they need to begin over at book one? Can they start with Mermaid Confidential? Where do you prefer people jump in at?
Well, they can start Mermaid Confidential. I mean, the one thing you try to do with the books, and this is by design, is not to, like, if you have a new reader and they pick up a book and they're lost or whatever, you always give enough background, or you develop the character quickly. You let them know, okay, this is this type of character, so that they can go right in. In other words, you never want to have a book where it's required that they read previous books, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
You have to have each one stand alone. So and then if they jump in and they like it, there's the list of books, in the publication order inside, at the beginning of each book that the publisher lists, And you can go back and decide, how much you want to invest in the series, and then go from there.
Excellent. Well, we'll put links. Also, your website, timdorsey.com, has a list of the books there, right?
Yes, it's got a list. It's got the covers. It's got various stuff. I have a merchandise store. Who would have thought that people would want to buy, Serge shirts and stuff like that? But they're out there.
That's so funny. Excellent.
Yeah, so
we'll put links there to make it easy for folks to find you. Tim, been so much fun chatting. Thank you for taking time to come on the show. We're going to send everyone to pick up their copy of Mermaid Confidential.
Thank you so much for having me.
Now stay tuned for an audiobook excerpt from Richard Gleaves' The Jason Crane series.
Midnight struck. The Sandman had come. A few faint notes drifted through the rooms of 417 Gorybrook. The hollow wind testing the weatherproofing, the weak scritch of the persimmon tree against Zeph's window, and the drone of Hedwig's snoring. The old house shifted, creaked, and the shade of Agatha Van Brunt descended from the attic. "Brom?" she called. The ghost paused, collecting herself on the stair. She passed a mirror, but the glass remained empty, reflecting only absence. Agatha would not have recognized herself anyway. She had been beautiful long ago, and still was in her own mind. Not a toothless and wizened spectre. Not a blue chalk sketch of a hag half erased from the blackboard of night. She drifted into the master bedroom, disappeared into a shaft of moonbeams, and reappeared on the other side. She stood over Hedwig, listening to him snore. But Hedwig was not Brom. She needed Brom. She slipped through the floor into Zeph's bedroom. She stood over him for a long time, listening to the persimmon tree's weak coffin scratch on the window screen. Brom? No, this was not Brom. Not Brom, her son. But she loved this boy. So much hidden potential. He reminded her of Dylan, her grandson. Dylan had slept in this room many, many times. But Dylan was dead, never to return. This boy, Zeph, was alive. So alive. Oh, would that he might remain so forever. Look at him. Who would consign such a handsome lad to the rot of death? Only a very cruel and blind God. Agatha brushed her spectral lips to Zeph's cheek. He stirred, scratched the spot, and rolled into his pillow. But Zeph was not Brom. Where? Oh, Brom is dead. She remembered now. Brom is dead, and so are Hermanus, my husband, and Hans, my brother, and old Baltus Van Tassel, and Katrina, all dead. Only old Agatha remains, after a fashion, to trouble the world. Her sense of herself sharpened and returned to her. She searched the rooms for the Crane boy. She sensed him. Yes, here was the boy, sleeping fitfully, holding his animal. She extended a hand as if to reach into Jason's chest and take his heart in her talons. The dog woke, sensing Agatha's presence, and growled. Growl till your voice cracks, cur. I could kill this child myself. I could possess the man or the boy. I could take the butcher knife from the drawer. I could stride through the night in strong male form and dissect this child at my whim. Something struck her. Something blasted her up and away from the boy. She collected her energies again and tried to re-enter, but could not pass through the walls. When she found her voice, it came as hollow and cold as wind through a tomb. Who is here? Agatha whispered, and her tone might have withered grass. Show yourself. She waited with growing confusion and anxiety. She threw herself forward and battered the door like a tempest. Who is here? she cried. But no one answered.